Within the last couple of weeks.
We're ready.
I'm ready.
It's 2 minutes late.
Nope,
Welcome,
We're gonna
everyone,
fire you.
to the November 5th DMAC meeting. And we're gonna be a little short on public comments today unless the crowd comes in. Nick, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
I'm sure you've learned a lot at your seminar on county administrators. But I'm still gonna repeat because we're online, what the 3 steps are in the process we're going through. First step is with the DMAP. And we have a charter and we're to make a recommendation with 5 separate districts and with the people in those districts running for office will be elected from those districts at large. We report this recommendation to the county commissioner commission probably at the end of November. And the county commission, of course, they have the right to make changes or they can reject it. But that's what the process would be. If the county commission decides to move forward, then step 3 is it goes to the voters. And that would be in May 2026. At that time, there's 4 commission seats that will be on the ballot. All of those will be at large. The work we're doing will not impact those elections because the maps have not been approved by the voters. However, if it does pass in January 2028, the maps will have the effect of what I just described. And there would be 4 years of data until you get the next census from 2030, and that you get that information in 2032. And I'll have Steve describe that in a little more in detail on how that might change the maps. So that's where we are. And as we concluded at our last meeting and what I anticipate most of the discussion will be today is about where we are on the 2 maps. And as Drew pointed out, it's really talking about 6 particular precincts and how to use those to balance out the 5 districts that we've been discussing. Primarily that's in the southern district and the I call it the western district that will need to go into Bend to find the population and number of registered voters that are in our margins. So let us then go to the minutes. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes for the October 29th meeting? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you. Second, Phil. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. This is a time for public comment. We have 2 in the public. Have any of you, either of you signed up for public comment?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone online?
You asked for the raise hand.
Please raise your hand online if you'd like to make public comment. Apparently not have, so we'll move forward now to the staff updates, which is item number 5. Update on voter registration. Steve.
Not much to report here that besides that I have a cold, so pardon the hoarse voice. I've provided updated voter registration statistics dated 11/1/25, and the maps that you should be looking at now should have those numbers imported so that they represent the new totals. 164,000 and sorry. That's really slow. 164,858.
Yes, no.
Could we get an email of this spreadsheet, like file? Would that be okay? So I could like look at it myself and maybe color code the boxes or things like that.
Yep.
Be okay.
Uh,
Email it to us. Or I could use marker like Carol has done, but
Yeah, we can do that. It was, you want it in a spreadsheet versus PDF?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do that.
That'd be great.
I think you're losing your mind. That's
What happened? That's crazy.
Bill,
So Steve, I had a question. This doesn't include inactive voters, right?
Correct. This is active voters as of that date. Inactive voters are another pool. If somebody were sitting in an inactive status due to an address change or invalid signature after an election, if they came to our office and filled out a registration card, we would reactivate them, then they would be represented here, or if they went online and did the same.
Kind of amazing that there's 10,000 more since 2022, 3 years.
Motor voter has driven that quite a bit, but yeah, our registration totals have boosted, I think somewhere in the ballpark of 50% over the last 7 or 8 years. So, but yeah, there's a significant amount of growth.
Do you include an inactive voter as someone who hasn't voted so many times?
No, an inactive voter would be somebody that, again, maybe they changed their address and we received information from the USPS that they're no longer where they said they were when they registered to vote. Or if they had a challenge signature during an election, if they don't respond to us within 21 days after election day, we inactivate those voters as well. So there are other instances as well, but we do not mail ballots to inactive voters.
Steve, what do you do with someone who at 16 voter registration gets their driver's license but's not entitled to vote? What do you do when that person becomes 18?
If that person did not opt out when they were automatically registered by going to the DMV, when they're mailed that little card from the state to say, you can choose a party affiliation or you can opt out. If they chose to ignore that, then they would be automatically registered, and their first election, after they turn 18, they will receive a ballot. We'll automatically mail one to them. They're automatically activated.
And if they don't choose the party, then they're in the non-affiliated group.
Correct. Yep. They're still would become an active registered voter, and they'd just be mailed a non-affiliated ballot.
Neil, can you talk into your microphone?
Sorry. Did you take my microphone?
No, I got one right here. That's yours.
Well, I'll keep it then.
You can have two if you want.
Other questions for Steve about this? Yes.
I just odd anomaly. In the Redmond number 36. Or no, yeah, Redmond 36. Went down by 2,000.
I see Redmond increasing by 21 voters. Or that precinct that you referenced.
Well,
I'm sorry, I
was
don't see it
looking
now.
between
22
22 at 9,700 versus 25 at 7,500.
Sorry, yeah, that was, earlier in this process, that conversation when asked for that information from 2022, I had made some adjustments to that precinct line in Redmond to balance.
Okay, it's a
maintain the-
precinct line
It
change.
was a precinct line change. They were all still within city limits and voting on the same things. The only change that the voters would have seen would have been an update to their precinct number. The content of the ballot would have been the same. And I did that to balance out the number of registered voters not to exceed the 10,000 limitation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
just
Yeah. Thank you.
it happened.
You're right.
So what happens, 2030 census, and then we get data in 2031? What does the clerk do with that information? What's your responsibility with precincts and population in 2032?
My responsibility is to take the data from the legislature with the new House, Senate, and congressional district lines as presented and implement them into our precinct lines. And then in addition to that, and maybe what your question would be leading to, would be the districts that we currently have zones or districts for, such as the library district and their zones, or COCC, or the administrative school district. We need to learn those new precinct lines or those new precinct combinations and lines and boundaries from those districts. They would tell us what those district boundary lines are. And they do tend to follow those precinct lines, but not entirely, not always. COCC during this last redistricting process didn't entirely follow precinct lines. And that really sliced and diced and created a lot more ballot styles than we had previously. But
And so at that time, you could also then create new precincts?
we could. So with this instance, if this was to move forward and if it were adopted, we would wait for the county to let us know what those new district lines were.
So let's assume for the moment that the voters approve in May the 5 zones that are on the ballot. How would that information impact those zones?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
With, let's say it's 2032. And what we're doing today with the 5 zones are approved by the ballot, approved by the voters in May 2026. But what you just described, how would that impact those 5 zones?
I would need to hear from the county what any adjustments that needed to be made to those district lines, if any. If that makes sense. I would not my office would not be responsible for taking the liberty of redrawing those district or updating any district boundaries. We would need to hear that from the governing body.
But you give that information to the county commission.
They would give it to me.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking these questions is we've had some discussions about with the 2030 census and the fact that we're mid-census right now. Can we make a recommendation to the county commission that in 2032, they review the districts based upon the population figures from that census, et cetera? So I think Jen might have an answer for us here.
Yeah, I checked with our legal counsel on that question this morning, and DMAC has a prerogative to make recommendations on what redistricting may look like. And the commissioners could on their own also decide what redistricting may look like. And it can be written into the ballot title. So it's not a requirement that it's written in, is my understanding. Although maybe I didn't ask that exact question to our legal counsel. My question was, could recommendations be made and could it be written into the ballot title? And that the answer was yes, it could be. So for instance, it could be recommended that if a map goes forward and passes, that it's redistrict after the 2030 census comes in. Or any other recommendations on what redistricting may look like. Those recommendations can be put forth up to the commissioners for their consideration, and then they can also consider any other redistricting options that they're looking at if they so choose. It's not a requirement that that's made though.
And the other recommendation we talked about last week was drawing by lots. So the committee can recommend that to the county commission as we move forward. Melanie.
Do that on those maps that we recommend to them?
Yes.
So we're saying, well, the numbers and by that method, send them.
Yes, correct. Other questions for Steve? All right, well, thank you for that update. Building permits. Lee.
Let's pull this up on the screen here. The map, I was trying to share it to the screen. Yeah, I think here it goes. Well, you have it in the handout. Well, let's see what's. So here you have the map provided in the agenda packet. And this map has the full count of the permits and the units for all the properties.
I think we're working on the technical difficulties of that, yeah. We can pause for a minute if it's easier to look on the screens. I know the packet's a little small.
There's a button that's not working.
Okay, I think I think we'll want to have access to the screen. So why don't we adjourn the meeting for 3 minutes while we restart our equipment and then take it back up?
All right, we will adjourn for 5 minutes.
Sorry.
Recess rather than.
All right. Okay, your break is over. We have rebooted and I think we're operational again. So Lee, and you have a new microphone.
Well, that one wouldn't reach, but maybe that's better.
Yeah, I know it's harder when he talks more short.
Hopefully this doesn't do anything. Cover your ears.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right, so as you can see on the screen now, we have the building permit map with all the new dwellings from 2022 to present. You'll notice there's a note here that this map does not include the Redmond multifamily units. We don't have that data yet. But this, other than the Redmond multifamily units, this includes all the properties with the permit counts and the unit counts.
So it's fair to say Redmond should look hotter, probably, at the multi-unit counts.
Yeah.
Not knowing the specific data, I would think that there'd probably be a slight impact to the Redmond area.
There's 306 Redmond multifamily permits that were not included because we were not able to get the unit numbers out. So 306 were not included in that data.
And they were multifamily, you said?
Yep, issues. No, not units. We have no idea the units. Yeah. I can tell you how many single families we are just for comparison, if that's helpful. 1 second while I pull that up. So 944 single family, and it was one, and they did verify that it was one permit, one unit.
That number again?
940, maybe 44. Let me see if there's a blank row at the top. 940 are of single permits issued in Redmond for one unit. And then we have whatever I said, 240 to 300, 306. Thank you. It's two different spreadsheets. I was toggling back and forth.
Questions for Lee or Jen?
Well, I also just want to acknowledge one more thing. There's an outstanding request from the DMAC from last meeting to have the building permits issued, broken out by year, and that was not, we were not able to turn around that request for this meeting. We do anticipate having that, that request filled for next meeting and including in the meeting packet.
I remember that request was for each of the years.
Starting with 22, 23, 24, 25, you'll have a row of precincts, units, and permits, permits issued and units for each of those years.
Thank you.
Do we think we can get the Redmond information for that?
It is unclear. They're very busy. We've been pinging them about every 2 to 3 days asking, and have not been able to get an estimate from them on when we're going to be able to get those units. But I will ping again after this meeting, trying to be respectful of staff time there too.
Melanie, did you?
I was just gonna say, it makes sense to talk about this more once we have that data, because, you know, I went through and marked off all the ones that have a lot of units, and Redmond isn't even on the list, but we know that there's lots of building up there, and if you have 300 multifamily, and there was 2 to 3 units per each of one of those, that's still 600 to 900 units, and probably some of those multifamily permits are large apartment buildings, so we just don't know those numbers yet, so I think that would be helpful to have to understand Redmond's growth.
Drew.
Yeah, I would just point out, as we start looking at, we're talking about the precincts and everything, we look at B and C and the data that we have in front of us again. The Redmond zone, if you will, is the outlier on both maps in terms of the numbers running at the lower end. And I guess personally, I take a little bit of confidence that that's going to get balanced out a little bit just from this permit information, because it's clear, even without the granularity of the numbers that we're talking about here, it's clear that the highest growth going on right now amongst these is in that zone E. So, which I think is good, because when you look at the 6 precincts we were talking about before, none of them are in E. The 6 are all sitting somewhere between, mostly between C and D, but a little bit with one involves A on precinct 12, but most of them are DC and a little bit of B swaps, but nowhere is E in there. So with that in mind, with the permit information in mind, I think we can safely say that we're okay up there. But that's just my conclusion, at the bigger number level right now.
Bill.
Yeah, kind of to follow up with you, or your point, Drew, is that's also, I did the numbers for the West Bend and the East Bend districts, and they're on the lower of the, of the 5 also. And they have a lot of the permits, the discrepancies between a multifamily and single family, they're big. And so there's 1,000 in East Bend, and from my math, and was it 967 in the most aggressive. I didn't do all the precincts in each, but just the ones that stood out. It's a lot of multifamily there too. So I think it would pull it up versus the Northwest and the South County. So kind of, the whole thing kind of seems to work together. At least I looked at it with map C, and I think B is similar.
Drew.
So I think if you're looking at East Bend, that's column C. That's the highest number we got going on both these maps. So in fact, if you got permits going into C, that's going to skew that higher.
That's South County.
Well, includes, sorry, I'm looking at different color code. My mistake. Yeah. Sorry. But it does pull in on B. It pulls in that
Yeah.
southwestern corner. So
Melanie.
Just to that point, the map C, when you're talking about South County, you're including 33, and that's where there's 520 units, one of the higher new units that's going in, and higher amounts of permits in 33. So with that one at the top of the list on map C, that does not kind of work with, well, if you think growth is happening there, that should be lower.
Bill.
Yeah.
But I guess my comment back to that is that we don't know how, goes back to 22, so we don't know how many of those were already included in the numbers. So I don't know that it's, without breaking out by the years, I'm not sure what we know, but I'm just saying, I didn't think, anyway, go ahead.
Melanie.
I just think for the principle for Redmond is we like that column is low because we think a lot of growth is happening there, but we don't think the same about Bend with this using the same metric. I just want to understand why it's not the same. Wouldn't we want the column to also be lower if we think a lot of growth is happening in South County with Lapine and everywhere else?
Matt.
Yeah, from a balance standpoint, I guess I would ask Melanie if she's got a suggestion of if we were to put 33 back up to East Bend, what would you trade out and still maintain your overall communities of interest to try to keep your development pattern similar?
Yeah, I think you're looking at 5 and 2 that are on the south part of Bend that are experiencing less growth than the other parts of Bend. So, I mean, I'm just going to state my principle would be that if you're within the city of Bend, you should be within a contiguous district. But because we are forced to draw 5, we can't do that. We have to split Bend up. I also think there maybe is some work. I've heard some feedback around why is Terrebonne not included with Redmond? As those are really close communities. Is it better for Terrebonne to be included with Redmond? Then that would cause us to tweak a couple other precincts, I think. But that's where I would start looking is starting with map B and trying to tweak from there.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess at the last meeting, we were all given homework of coming with a better plan. And I'd love to see what you came up with.
Yeah, I would start looking at, I mean, I think the problem that I'm having is if you start putting 2 into South County, then you're splitting a community of interest in that part of Bend, which is our Hispanic population. So I worked at it. I'm not sure that I could come up with a better map than map B. And also got some new feedback recently around precinct 18 in Terrebonne and Redmond. So I'm happy to workshop that but I think we need to look at it. And I think I would be willing to have, the columns that are the fastest growing places. Like you look at map B, the purple column includes that east side of Bend where there's a lot of growth happening. That makes sense. That column should be smaller to me. So that's why I think I like map B better than map C. And if you want to change map B, you can suggest too, but those are just my thoughts right now.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Matt.
Yeah, I guess I give him kind of similar comments I made last week. If you take a look at map B and you look at precincts 47 and 5, I mean, they're both within the city limits and they are both highly developed. If you pull them out of the West Bend, you're going to be dividing up homeowners associations and existing subdivisions and developments, as opposed to keeping those two with West Bend. I mean, that was kind of the trade-off is if you look at if you pull up your map of the precincts and look at the development patterns, the subdivisions, the roads, the streets, I mean, you're literally going to be splitting. In fact, some of the lines almost go through specific or individual lots. within highly concentrated subdivisions within, for example, between 8 and 47, 25, 4, 25, and 25 both share the same existing subdivisions with 5. Yeah, like I say, I don't think it makes any sense. And I think if you look at the way, for example, East Bend goes up into 12 and, 47 and 5, I think if the public was looking at this, it's going to look like we're trying to gerrymander something.
I'm also thinking about what does the public think about one of the fastest growing precincts in Bend being represented alongside Lapine, right? If we're looking to try to keep communities of interest together and consider growth, that's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Oh, and I also looked at that. I mean, 33, I know you live in 33 and you don't want to be associated with folks in Lapine.
Not what I said.
But
Don't put those words in my mouth.
I'm still
Okay,
talking. I
let's-
still have the floor.
Let's, work through
But if you take a look at 33, the north part of 33 matches up with 21. The east side of 33 matches with 21. The southern part matches with 43. Granted, you've got some urban areas within 33, but it has the most in common with the surrounding precincts. And quite frankly, if you're going to balance the population, it makes more sense to put the other two that are actually inside Bend than to put 33 into Bend.
Melanie.
I'm just gonna say this for the last time. That argument that most of 33 is rural is incorrect. That 33, most of 33 is inside our urban growth boundary. This black line you're seeing here is which properties have been annexed so far. That is not the urban growth boundary that is in our comp plan that talks about our expansion areas. So most of 33, there's that little split off to the right, is within Bend. And I just want to be really clear about that. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I don't appreciate imputing motives to what I'm trying to talk about here. This is my corner of town that I grew up in. I'm familiar with all of Bend, right? But this is where I'm very familiar. And I'm also really familiar with all of the approvals and land use and everything else we've been doing in this part of town that is going to lead to a lot of growth. So when we're talking about making sure these columns are calibrated correctly to think about growth going forward, that's just a big problem with map C for me. And I understand we have to split up Bend because we are forced to draw 5 districts instead of 4 + 1 at large or something else. So there is going to be some weird stuff happening where we have to go into Bend. But what I see here with the entire west side of Bend all being into one district, I mean, you could argue that looks like gerrymandering, right? And I don't think we need to make those accusations. I think we can just state our opinions and we can work on what we think the map should look like. And that's that. I don't think we have to impute motives to people. I don't impute motives to you trying to do something with 33. I think we just have a difference of opinions around what's going on in that area. And I'd be happy to talk about some of the other ones. I think my concerns in that part of town are 2 and 25, I think should go together. And 33, I think putting with South County does a disservice to the people of Bend, but that's just my opinion. I'm one person on this committee.
Phil.
So I'd like to go through an exercise if everybody has their map books. Because if we're looking for communities of interest or what looks close to their next door precincts, let's go across the south side of Bend. And let's start with map 5. And because that's the one that is attached, is in map B along with 47, and you can see most of 47 on this when you look at 5.2. But what you'll see is that the south boundary of 5, that entire area is already developed. It's already part of the community. Brookswood runs right through it. So it's if you're familiar with the communities, it's River Rim, it's the neighborhoods to the east of there, but that's a very intact city precinct. And then 47, you see the same thing, except it's on the other side of the river, but it shows Broken Tops up in the upper left of that. And then you have all the existing neighborhoods all along there. that are, some of them are they're in the west side of the river, but they're all intact. But if you go to 2, you'll see that 2 is somewhat similar, although it still has more undeveloped area, but it abuts not road and rural. It's right there next to the southeast 43, which is a big precinct in southeast Deschutes County. If you go to 33, the big thing that isn't, our maps that are in the packets don't really show all of 33. And what's important is this: when you look at the actual 33, you can see the precinct, but it's the second page there's a part that's east of the green line there that's all rural. Where you're talking about, Stevens Ranch, is the section of land right in the middle of the precinct, right above the number 33. And that's a section of land. The part that's being developed is on the left side of that diagonal. The part Hayden Homes is on the right side. It's still today completely juniper and rock, and is going to take years to develop. The part north of that is all rural, that northern part of 33, and all of that side of 33. Then when you go below Stevens Ranch, that's where the landfill is. And then the part that's called the knee is this to the lower left of 33, the number 33, and that's still undeveloped. So though there may be more development in the future, currently it's consistent with the surrounding precincts than it is. So this is the only one that still has that character. The other 2 we were looking at don't have that character. And so that's why, to me, just on a character basis, and the fact that it's growing fast, I don't think that, although, I'm aware of what's there because I see it every day, and I've seen it developed over the last 5 years, what's going on. I understand, because of your role at the city, you realize what's coming there, but that's not the way it is now, and that's not how parts of it are even. I mean, this is very rural. North of Stevens Ranch is all 5 and 10 acre parcels, or even bigger, all the way up to Bear Creek. So I kind of reject the argument that it's makes more sense to have it. It may at some point grow into completely an urban precinct, or probably be divided in precincts next census. But I know you're firm about it, but for other members that want to kind of see those comparisons, I think the individual maps are better to do that. So that's my response to
Melanie.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental difference in how we're thinking about this. You are looking more at the land and the character of the area. And what I'm hearing you say is, it's okay if this neighborhood that looks a lot like that neighborhood in 2, it's okay if this neighborhood and all these voters are in the same district as South with Lapine and Sun River. These are then voters that have been in this urbanized neighborhood for many, many years, right? That's my concern, is about the voters. And is that voting block a community of interest with the folks that are in these other areas if we're putting this all into South County? So I think that's just maybe a fundamental difference in how we're thinking about this. Because I've also heard, 12 shouldn't be up with North part of Bend. If you look at 12, there's it's a very small population. So I think we should maybe we should start talking about voters. And I also would be very willing to, you could say, well, we could split precinct lines and we could put this more rural area of 33 into South, but then we would not have the right balance between voters and, voter registration population, because the ultimate thing we're doing here is taking some people in Bend and having them vote with other parts of the county. That's what we're doing. So I think I'm just trying to figure out, and for me, because this area is growing so much, it makes less sense for me to do that. But I think we all need to admit we're going to have to do that in some way, because there's no other way to draw 5 districts without doing that. And I think we just are going to have different approaches on how we think that should go.
Matt, then Ned.
Yeah, I don't think we're probably going to convince each other either way. But, when I'm looking at the 2 of them, bottom line, I'd prefer to put 33 and a whole bunch of others into the Bend district, because it makes more sense from a community of interest voting population. But in order to balance these, we have to choose which ones are going to be voting with other districts or with other precincts in the same district. And I just think looking at the actual existing communities, not what's going to happen in 5, 10, 20 years, what's in place today, it makes, to me, it makes more sense than it's just logic to have 5 and 47 in Bend. And, 33 looks less like Bend than the others do currently. But, granted, we got to balance it somewhere. And I just think the 5 and the 47 make more sense than the 33 right now. Ned?
Yeah, I have a couple of times. One about high growth areas. One of my favorite topics, Lapine just got its sewers. It's going to grow faster than anybody else, in my opinion. Just like Bend did, just like Redmond has, just like every other place has. So that's one issue. The other thing, though, is last meeting, Drew, you had 5 precincts or 6 precincts you were worried about. Did you come up with an option that works number-wise and stuff? If you did, I'd love to see that.
Well, if you're done with your comment, that was one of the 2 things I was going to get to. The first point I wanted to make was just to respond to Melanie's input earlier about Terrebonne. And I don't dismiss the point at all that there are probably a number of people in Terrebonne who would find themselves better aligned as a community of interest with Redmond. But once you start picking at the numbers on this, if you take Terrebonne, if you take 18 out of map or zone A, then it's creating all sorts of other issues for us there. And I would also maintain the western part of precinct 18 isn't so necessarily aligned with Redmond. We're just really talking about the area that's directly above Redmond. And I think as a community of interest, there's a lot of largely rural folks in 18 that I think will have no problem being in zone A. I say that as somebody who lives up that direction, but not in that particular precinct. I think the thing I'm looking at right now is talking about map B and the sensitivities around the community of interest there that Melanie's raised with the Hispanic population, the debate we're having about 33, and I thank you, Phil, for walking us through some of that. I think that was helpful. We've got a map right now that has 2 in with D and 33 in with B on map B. I think it would be interesting to look at, and what's interesting about these 2 precincts, by the way, is unlike some of the ones we're looking at here, the numbers aren't so far off. If you start messing with those 2, you're talking about maybe 1,000 voters difference between them. And I would look at the possibility of putting 2 into C as we've seen it, but having 33 going as it is on map B. So in other words, kind of a split between maps B and C just in that corner of the map. And that doesn't address your point, Matt, about 5 and 47. Okay, I'll grant you that, but I'm trying to solve just this issue down in the southeast corner of Bend. And I'm wondering if we looked at those, if we wanted to take an active map, because we didn't touch them last time, map E and F, and wanted to play with that, if the other committee members are interested in doing that, what that would look like.
Where did you say to put 2?
Carol?
Sorry.
That's right. So what I'm suggesting is that 33 would look as it does on map C. Well, I'm saying 33 would look as it is on C, so it'd be in zone C.
Do this live?
Yeah.
We can do it with map E, Lee.
Yeah, it could really
Just
be.
to remember-
I'm playing with either one of them, so whichever one you want to work with.
So we'll start with map B as map E to.
Okay, so if you're going from map B, what I'm asking you to do is basically put 2 into zone C. Sorry, other way around. Put 33 into zone C, and leave 2 where it is. Get myself confused. Talking about. It. No, I was just giving the reverse of what we've got on this map right now. So. It's all right.
We then have a problem with the range both on population and target if with Lee was just putting that up.
Do you have more than one change, Drew?
Yeah, so two, but that's,
Two would then, go ahead.
no, it's not contiguous at that point. I'm getting myself confused between the two maps, because on C, if you put it in with 25, then they're contiguous.
We started with map B. Do you want us to start with map C?
Yeah, start with map C, sorry.
Let's go back and make the change to E and put 33 back, so we keep that, yeah. Back to B. Great, and then go to map F. I think that's where Drew was starting his changes from.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would put two in with zone B there. Yeah, so he obviously takes C down below the threshold, but this is getting back to this whole notion about how much growth you've got going on in there versus what's going to happen in two. So it's kind of anticipating what might happen. It pushes us out of the current zone, but.
I think the problem is, even though we want to anticipate where the growth might be, that we need to stay within the zone, to stay within our guidelines, the criteria guidelines. So we'd have to find a way to bump up C. And B would be the place to do it, but then you run into 33 as being the precinct.
Well, if you could try taking 5 and putting that also there into C. And we're kind of splitting the baby then on both sides. Ooh, that takes D way down. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Matt.
I guess, I mean, I appreciate this exercise as far as anticipated growth, but who knows what the economy is going to do next week or next month or 6 months from now. All the permits that have been pulled doesn't mean that a single one of those are going to be built in the next year. And we do have another census coming up in 2030 where corrections can be made and adjustments are going to be made anyway. It seems to me like we need to deal with data we currently have, not with what could happen. Everything that was projected in 2007 never occurred in 2008 or for the next 10 years, in fact, after that, based on economic impacts. So while I appreciate the fact that this is what's anticipated today, doesn't mean any of it's going to happen.
Carol.
I did do my homework over the weekend and I feel that map B fits all the criteria. It's contiguous. It uses precinct lines. It's not unreasonably dividing communities of common interest. And it does consider current growth patterns because, as you can see, 33 had 322 permits, which is 520. So that's what's happening now. And I agree that maybe they won't all be built, but it's the only information that we have. And we all understand that we will probably not be sitting here redrawing this map in 2 years, but it's the best scenario until we get there. So ours is just a recommendation for now. And then after the 2030 census, Then they will be sitting here doing it again, and then then they will have actual figures.
So you favor map B?
I do.
Melanie?
I just get some clarification, just to clarify what you said, Carol, that, so Steve, when you get the congressional and House maps, you'll likely get that in 2031 or 2032.
Toward the end of 2031.
So you'll get those by the end of 2031.
Correct.
Potentially, a county, if they did the same timeline, could maybe get them to you within that year.
I would hope that it would be a fairly quick.
So then those would be in effect for 2032 elections.
It would now, my reference to those other districts, for those districts, we have the benefit of not having another election until that following odd year for the impact of for what we're talking about here. I don't know what the timeframes would be, if that would not be in effect until that 34, or because the filing period would already be underway.
So there's a chance that these maps could be in place until 2034 that we're drawing right now.
Now that you've explained it that way. Yeah.
So I think we really need to think about that. And I agree with you, Carol. Thanks.
That's
Right.
6 years, because they're not going to take effect till 2028. So, sorry, I was saying the front end of this is 2028. So we're talking about 2028, 2030, 2032, 2034.
Matt?
Yeah, I appreciate what Carol's trying to do. You might take a look hard at precinct 12, is that map B puts into East Bend, and kind of back to the little picture, what does not look like the other. I mean, the existing development patterns in 12 more nearly match the North County or the other area as opposed to Bend. And I still, you're not going to convince me that 5 and 47 look anything like South County or should not be connected with East Bend. But, like I say, that's my opinion.
So what were you suggesting on 12?
Well, in map B, I don't think 12 comes anywhere close to looking like the rest of the East Bend district. 12 is much more rural and is much more nearly connected with the adjacent districts that would be in A or precincts.
Carol?
Precinct 12 in the 2020 population had almost 1,000 people. As far as the voter permits, it had 888. So we're talking about a relatively small number. Not that they should be disregarded. Everybody is important.
And also, if we look at permits, it's one of the lowest on the list. So there's really compared to the rest of the county, next to no growth going on up there if we go off these numbers. So,
Phil?
Yeah, well, the reason there's not much growth up there is because it's outside the urban growth boundary.
Right,
So
right.
it's not part of Bend in any way. So why we feel like we need to lump precinct 12 in with East Bend when we're trying to get the other districts to have enough doesn't make sense to me. So it's really a rural district. It'll stay that way for foreseeable future, I think.
Yes.
I'm just going to say I haven't heard anyone speak about precinct 20 on both maps. Precinct 20 is a bunch of urban Bend voters, and they're with Terrebonne and Sisters. So I think what we're talking about is we have to make some judgment calls, and we all may have some different judgments, but you cannot draw 5 separate districts without putting some pieces of Bend with places that are not inside Bend, right? And so I think it's just, what are our different views on how that should happen, right? Because if you're going to make the argument about 47.5, you should be making the same argument about 20, and it's just going to be a judgment call on how we have to carve up Bend.
Matt?
Yep. I'm happy to address 20. That's, like I say, back to trying to balance things out. We have to, matter of which ones make the most sense to go with which areas. 20 is, let's see, 20 is shown in the District A in both map map B and map C. And so that's one that, I mean, we all pretty much agree with. Granted, unfortunately, I'd love to just follow Bend city limits as a district, but quite frankly, it doesn't work population wise.
Other comments? Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of getting off track a little bit here. 20 is, to me, is a little bit like 18. You start messing around with 20 and you have a cascade of effects that goes on. If you look at the numbers, I think it's maybe one of the top 5 or 6 precincts in terms of numbers. You know, you're over 5,000 there. So it creates a ripple effect. So I'd prefer to kind of stay focused on the matters at hand and not start picking apart ones that are consistent between the two maps. I personally, the more and more we talk about this, and I'm looking at these two maps, it's almost, for me, almost becoming a coin flip operation. I see the pros and cons for both of these maps that everybody's describing today, and I'm not sure that I see in my own mind a consensus forming around one or the other. But I'm open to arguments, so I let the discussion continue.
Turning for a moment on both B and C, the question again on 18, which is the precinct above Redmond that includes Terrebonne, but I think we're all in agreement that a large portion of that is rural. If I'm trying to look between B and C, what was done if well, both of them have 18 in the sisters thing, so never mind. The point I was trying to make doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
I withdraw it.
To our world.
What? So the things,
Bill.
so to me, when it was mentioned gerrymandering, and I don't like 20. It actually it's borders 12s include 4 other precincts. I mean, it's adjacent to 4 other that are in. So to me, I don't think we should alter that either. And I would just reiterate about 12. I think belongs in that more than it does in East Bend. So I don't think that should be in play, but at all. So, and what really looks like gerrymandering to me the most is 47, which has no, doesn't connect with South, the rest of the South County, and knowing the neighborhoods, they're not really part of that. I mean, it just isn't connected.
Melanie.
Yeah, I think I'll just reiterate the point that we are talking about voters. We're not talking about land. We're not talking about built environment. Ultimately, what we're doing is dividing up the voters of Deschutes County into 5 pieces. And my point with 20 was not to say we should, I mean, I think that there could have been a more methodical process to create these maps. I think there could have been more public involvement to help guide us in these decisions. We are where we are today. My point about talking about 20 is that if you're going to say certain arguments about the bottom part of Bend and different variations, you should be making that same argument about 20. And what we are doing is we're going to have trade-offs, right? I mean, you're talking about people in pretty well-developed, dense neighborhoods in Bend. And if we think about communities of interest, I don't know how that's a community of interest with Terrebonne, right? But they are in the same district. So we're just going to have to grapple with that. And we're just going to say, this is the most reasonable result that we could come up with. One of these options or something like it, right? But I just want to really reiterate, we're talking about voters and people. So when we say, well, 20 touches these other things, I don't think that's as relevant, other than we have to be contiguous, as what about the people in these precincts, makes sense to put together, understanding we cannot keep all of them together. It's not going to work. That's not what we've been directed to do. So we have to make a trade-off.
Phil.
So I'm not just looking at land. I also have lived here for 7 years. I know what the different neighborhoods are. I've represented all these people as well. And they do have different interests in those neighborhoods and areas. And just an example in Broken Top, there it's entirely an area of, center West Bend, and there aren't the same concerns when you go up, when you're sharing other places that we're talking about that are make more sense. They're sharing roads and same development patterns. These are inside I mean, if anything is reaching into the city for no reason, that to me is, and that's 47. So I think there is a difference, but it is the people, and different people live in different areas, and they live there for different reasons. And it may be price, it may be what they're interested in, whatever their lifestyle, whatever, but there are differences throughout different areas. So it's more than just land when we're looking at it. There's
Both map B and C include 20 in group A. So I understand, Melanie, you're just making a point on that. Other comments? Well, I appreciate the hard work you're doing. It's not going to be perfect. But we're still concentrating on those few districts or few precincts that Drew mentioned in the last meeting. And both maps meet the requirements and the measurements that are put forth in our criteria. Drew.
I don't know if this is kind of a question or a statement, Melanie, but I was just kind of looking at your comment earlier about the Hispanic population down in Southeast Bend. And I'm looking at, I guess it was from the meeting of 22nd October. So 2 meetings ago, we had those maps of interest groups, which include the ACS Hispanic Latino population map. And it shows 2 concentrations, basically. One is the one you referenced down in 2. It spills over a little bit into 25, but it's mostly in 2. And the other is up there in 12 and 41. From looking at this, that's where it breaks out the most. I guess I am not as concerned maybe as you were, because at least those groups then are kind of contained in, if you go with map C, and you've got precinct 2 in there with the South County, that group is at least kind of self-contained in 2. So you're keeping them together. And likewise with 41 up in the Northeast, which is not really a point of contention because it's the same on both maps. But I just wanted to say that I think I'm feeling less concerned about that interest group being broken up, but maybe you want to respond to that. I don't know.
Which
Excuse
interest
me,
group?
Ned.
I'm sorry. Which interest group are we splitting up? I mean, I appreciate this focus on groups of communities of interest.
Yeah, the mayor has talked about the Hispanic population in precinct 2, and I think arguing why she prefers map B is because it's in with Bend rather than being in with South County. And what I'm saying is that when I look at the Hispanic map, that group is pretty much in precinct 2. So as long as you're not splitting up precinct 2, they've got representation either way. Yeah.
So
Ned.
what is the percentage of quote Hispanics that makes it a community of interest in a precinct? I mean, is there a number for that?
We're just going off the numbers off this map. That's all I'm responding to. And there's the 2 highest concentrations are down there and up in precinct 41.
We just pulled it up on your screen. We have it for map B already, so we just pulled it up. We need to refresh it though, Lee. It's not pulling up the full range.
Neil.
Melanie.
Yeah, just to respond, I think one of our provisions is we don't want to dilute the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. And so I think when you look at the map that's in front of us, you're going to see the highest concentration of the Hispanic populations are in the cities and in Bend in particular, the Bend area. So I think if you put that 2 down into South County, that you risk running afoul of dilution of that vote potentially. I think that's just one way to look at it. So.
Neil.
Yes, Drew.
But, you know, if you were trying to keep that concentration together, you'd have to try to figure out a way to have 2 and 41 in the same district, because where the other big chunk of population, Hispanic population, is in 41, which on both maps right now is showing as part of Zone A. Melanie.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Okay.
How big is it?
Mr. Chair. Other comments? Matt?
Yeah, I guess I'm not as concerned based on the fact that the numbers are so small, the actual percentages are fairly small. I mean, it certainly points actually the argument of keeping 12 and 41 together. But it also, if you take a look at the African-American population, it shows a much stronger connection between 33 and 43. So if you're worried about keeping your populations of interest together, then that shows a very clear connection with 33 and 43.
Bill?
I guess, since we've kind of worked through most of these two maps, is there, I guess the one piece that we haven't been able to do yet is the monthly or the yearly, building permits. I don't know if that's still necessary or affects what we're doing, or I don't know how much clarity it'll bring. I mean, the building permit stuff's so complicated in a way. I mean, what I saw is that the parts that were lower on our population, if that was the kind of continued trend, they would become coming up, and so things would be equalizing. But I guess we're not really sure that either. But it seems like it, because Redmond has over 1,000 permits without including any of their apartments, so that would be a big jump up, I think, compared to some of the others. So I didn't know if we felt like we needed to wait for that, or can decide things, or.
Drew?
The one other thing that we talked around, but I don't know that we actually asked staff to produce anything for us, but I know it's been on the list of things, and I recognize with the sensitivity in today's world about districting and redistricting is the breakdown of party affiliations, and we've seen nothing on that so far that I know of.
And we've withheld that to the very end.
Correct.
We're there now.
Yeah.
And we need clarification then on exactly what information we would want.
So I'll turn it over to Lee. So we haven't directly been asked to produce that, so we don't have it, but we are queuing up knowing that that is something that many of you have talked about to have at the end. So I think Lee, and I'll turn it over to Lee, clarification on we can have that produced for next meeting, but clarification on how you want to see that data represented. And Lee can talk about different options maybe, or you guys can start about how maybe you'd like to see that.
Yeah, so for example, if you said, if you were wanting to know, we would take map B with the existing, what those 5 districts look like, and you wanted to know, for example, like a pie chart or, bar graph or whatever, what do those numbers of, the partisan numbers look like for, if this was adopted, what would it look like, or what would that look like versus C? And that's pretty easy to do. We can, add those numbers and then show where they're like equal or high or low or vary, the range differs a lot. So that's pretty easy. If you're wanting something like, we'd like to change, like we've been doing with the population and voters, and click, and what if we changed it and how would that affect? That takes a little more work to build that, to do the same thing what this viewer is doing. But so helps to know if you'd want to know, by precinct, or do you want to know just based on if we were to accept this district, or this map B option, what would those numbers look like for those 5 districts, in B or map C? Did that make sense? I hope.
Sorry, I just have a question just to clarify further too. Are we talking about major parties and nonpartisan, so 3 groups? Are we talking about major parties, nonpartisan,
and minor parties split out? How are these represented? So, or are we talking about major and minor parties and non-affiliated?
Well, as somebody, I'm the minor party representative here. I'm comfortable with us just looking at, Democrats, Republicans, non-affiliated voters. And I have to say, I personally think that we've done this right, putting this at the very end of the process, which to me speaks to the fact that we really have not been concerned with this issue first and foremost. In fact, it's last and last most, whatever you would say the opposite of that. But I feel like obviously it's been mentioned by the commissioners, so I don't think we can ignore it entirely. And I also think it's going to matter a lot to some very partisan folks that when we produce this, it's not looking like something that was ultimately gerrymandered, quote unquote. So I'm pretty confident that it's not going to show us a whole lot, but I still think we are required to do it. Let me be clear about that. And I personally would be happy with just, I would be happy with something that just shows what is the majority affiliation in each of the precincts, because I think that would show that it really is not a bearing on this whole process. So you could say in a lot of places nonpartisan, which is now the predominant vote or predominant number of voter registrations in the county, would be number one. But in some places it's going to be Democrats, some it's going to be Republican. And I think perhaps folks would take great comfort if they saw out of 50 precincts that there's kind of a third. Ultimately turns out that way. But anyway, I've rambled on enough. I'll cede the floor.
This kind of gets us off of B and C, but it does bring up something that I've felt strongly about is we haven't looked at political parties. I know we've been instructed to consider that, or not to consider it, but look at it after we get the maps. But we haven't looked at it. We haven't talked about it. We haven't gotten data on it. What are you going to do if you find out something going to change all the maps? I mean, I know, but it's proven a negative to me, which I find difficult. So I'm opposed to doing it.
What I would suggest, and Lee, see if this is a problem. We have two maps that are being discussed. So it sounds like you could do the three parties on each of those five maps, or excuse me, those five districts in the two maps. And it would be Democrat, Republican, and non-affiliated. The tougher question is if you wanted to get into the individual precincts. And I don't know what additional work that would cause. And I'm looking at Steve and Lee, but that would, if you wanted to get down into more of the detail, that would be the other option. Steve.
I could provide that data in the same format of a spreadsheet that we have submitted in today's packet. So having those three additional columns by precinct, and whether Lee can represent that, graphically on the map is Lee.
So
That'd be
Melanie.
good.
Well, I just think a bar chart for each district on each map is great. 1, 2, 3, and then a spreadsheet for Steve. And that seems like that gets us a lot of information. And then, yes, if we look at the map and see it's off, we should probably rework it. That's part of what we have to do. We don't want to give an advantage to any party, right? Hopefully that's not what's going to happen when they start that.
Bill. So I guess that's kind of me, the key thing is how do we know something's off? If we were asked to create maps based on these variables, we weren't asked to create maps based on partisanship, then when does the partisanship mean the map's no good? And then on top of that, if we're only applying these two maps, well, these two maps have a few precincts different, but I go back to the fact that we were asked by the county commissioners to come up with 5 districts based on communities of interest and 3 or 4 other things, not based on party. People that are against having districting, they can come out with their party summaries. People who are for it can come out with their party summaries. But the other big problem with even using parties is there's many precincts that have more non-affiliates, and I wouldn't not include independents because that's a whole nother group as well. Some people, the parties don't control the elections really now. They're not the biggest number of voters. So I think for a whole number of reasons, we should do it the way we were asked by the commissioners. If the commissioners want to discuss it or they can use it to support the maps or that's up to them. But it's like we did all this work to make this, and then we're going to look at it and say, so what's off and what's good? How do we know something's a good map and how do we know it's not? Because it's just.
Ned,
Well, I'm kind of agreeing with what Bill was just saying. We haven't considered it. By bringing it in now, that means we are considering it. So we've been instructed not to split it up based on political parties, and now we're going to start looking at political parties. I mean, I just have a hard time dealing with that. We haven't considered it, haven't had data. I don't really need data. Somebody can say that we did it based on political parties, but they'd have a hard time proving it if we haven't ever considered it, haven't ever debated it. So bringing it in just creates a problem. We're trying to create, what do you do when you find out? I mean, I know what Melanie just said, but what is too much? I mean, what percentage doesn't work? What are you going to do with this? I mean, maybe it's a silly analogy, but it's like a dog chasing a car. What are you going to do when you catch it? You're going to learn to drive? I mean, come on. It's.
Matt,
Oh, well, I had a couple other people had their hands up first, but
I'll go with Drew first, then I'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hear three different things being brought forward here. One of them was my own, and I'm willing to kind of back off what I suggested earlier. And I don't think we can ignore it entirely, but I accept, I guess, Melanie's approach, which is to say, let's look at the big picture rather than looking at anything by precinct and just looking at the two maps with the raw numbers. And if there's something crazy about them, that will tell us whether we need to drill down. I accept that as a reasonable course of action. I think, Ned, I think the reason that we need to do this, absolutely, and Phil, absolutely, we're not being required by the commission to do it. And I don't think it's our job to go in front of the county or in front of voters next year and say, hey, vote for our maps. Weren't we great? We created these maps. You should vote for them. Oh, we're not going to be part of that campaign. But I think in putting this forward, however it gets put forward, it's going to be an issue that gets raised. And I think if we ignore it, there's something to me that says we were somewhat derelict in our duties because we knew that the voters were going to raise this, and it's going to become a focal point of a campaign if it got totally ignored and it turns out the numbers are very skewed. So that's why I come out. To me, it's just a political reality that makes sense to check the box. And I think we've done it the right way by not really having it enter into the discussion or debate up until now. To me, again, I don't think it's going to show us a whole lot, and that's good. But I think we need to do it. Just say box checked.
Matt.
I can certainly understand where everybody's coming from, and I would agree that it's going to come into play when this goes to an election and to a campaign, because somebody's going to be happy, somebody isn't. But I think at this level, I think we should present maps that based on, the best effort to create balanced population, keep our communities of interest together, one that follows through with our directive. And then our report to the Board of Commissioners can certainly have any more details and that type of information that they want to put together for them to go out with. I mean, if we decide we want to present them with two maps because we're split on which ones we prefer, I strongly believe that C matches the communities of interest the best, both on minorities, on communities, in individual subdivisions, existing development patterns, et cetera. Granted, if there's others that strongly think that B more nearly represents, their interests and who they want to affiliate with, I mean, that's different. I mean, I think what we've done a pretty good job, the north part of the county, granted, for example, the Terrebonne area, I mean, those people may do more business in the community of Redmond, but they are more rural. They match up with Crooked River Ranch, with Rural Sisters. I mean, you've got the City of Sisters. Granted, it doesn't look like Terrebonne. That district pops down into, precinct 20. I mean, I agree that should be with Bend, but unfortunately Bend has enough population that it represents roughly half of the the county. And so we've got to pop into Bend somewhere in some places. And it's a matter of going, okay, well, these precincts look closest to this one or more different than this one over here. Like I say, if you take a look at B, it does the best job at putting all of the African-American population on this map. Majority are in South County, except where it pops up into 33. So 33, if you're going to keep that community together, definitely needs to be in that map. Along the same lines, we debated, number 12, whether it should be, between B and C, whether it goes with East Bend or with North County. You've got a Hispanic population that connects 41 and 12. So, if you're looking at development patterns, if you're looking at existing development, the existing communities, I really don't see how we can do much better than what we've come up with map C.
Ned, did you have another comment?
No, I was just back on proven a negative.
Drew.
Well, I think it seems to me we're discussing whether or not when I ask staff to produce this data related to party registration, and I'm hearing members of the committee saying, no, let's not do that. So maybe we should put that to a vote and either move on and ask them to produce that or move off this issue. And I think, by the way, I think if we take the step of saying we're not going to consider party registration, there probably needs to be a statement crafted by those who believe that on this committee as to why it was better off not doing that, and put that forward. Because I think, again, I think to me it's a dereliction of duty not to look at it at all. But I'm happy for us to put it to a vote and make a decision here one way or the other.
Bill, and then Ellie.
So I'm willing to put it to a vote also, but I guess the question to me was why would people didn't want to look into the partisan issues, not want it? Well, because we weren't asked to. We were asked to do it without looking at partisanship. So to now bring it up and like a final check off, well, that defeats the whole process. So I'm going to vote that we don't look into partisanship. The 3 commissioners can do that if they want. Some of the, we already know there'll be opposition to whatever this is that's coming out. So if there's a partisan, that'll be a problem for if there is a partisanship issue. But I just think it's beyond our scope of what we were asked to do. So,
Melanie.
I move that in order to make sure we're not drawing any districts for the purpose of favoring any political party, incumbent, elected official, or other person, that we have the staff provide a graph showing the registered voters, party affiliations, or NAP status in each of the districts on the 2 maps.
Is there a second?
Second.
Carol seconds. Discussion? Ned.
On these new building permits and growth areas and stuff, are we going to split that out by party affiliation or minorities also? Not that you need more work.
That hasn't specifically been requested of staff at this juncture.
Neil,
Drew.
I think what Melanie, we get into the specifics, but what Melanie described earlier is actually just a very high level breakdown of party registration, very high level. So we're not getting down into the precincts. So therefore we're not getting into any of the further minutiae that you're talking about there, Ned. I was searching for it in here, but I think Melanie used the language, which I think is actually germane to our assignment originally. I think it was actually in there. Yeah, thank you.
Number 3.
Yeah, from the county, it's actually in there that says, it does say no district shall be drawn for the purpose of diluting voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. And 2 says no district shall be for the purpose of favoring any political party, incumbent, elected official, or other person. So it's not supposed to be our priority, but it's also not to be ignored, I guess. So that's why I support the idea of asking for that work done. Thank you.
Matt.
Yeah, thank you for reading that. I picked out the word purpose. So that goes to intent. If we don't review what those are, then we can't have the purpose or intent to create different districts that would favor another. If we do review those and come back and say, well, we need to adjust our map because of whatever, then we have done it for the purpose of making that decision.
Ned?
One of the questions I have on this discussion about political parties, how many or what percentage is too many? How does the committee look at, if you got so many Rs or Ds in this district, how many is too many?
It goes to purpose.
Well, yeah, I mean, how do you decide that? I mean, I guess we'll have the same argument when we find out.
Neil, I would just like to say that when I have that information, it would make the difference between me saying we need to recommend make map B or map C, because it might be very specific. And I won't know that unless I have the information. So I'm just trying to be informed as I would be an informed voter.
Bill?
So I have a question about that thinking. So we've refined it to 2, and so you'd say the final decision would be based on political parties? I mean, that's what kind of you basically said. That doesn't make, and that doesn't make sense really to me that we made these based on all the other criteria, and so you'd be using political parties to choose between the 2?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, that's what I heard, sorry.
Sorry. I was saying that it would influence which map I think is the most fair, because it's saying that we should not draw it for the purpose of favoring any political party. So if map B favored one more strongly than map C, then we're not fulfilling our directive. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, but,
Okay.
oh, sorry. But again, to ask, so you are using that as a criteria to choose between 2 maps, if there was a difference?
Mr. Chair. Matt? Oh,
Well, I didn't know she was answering
I'm
that,
good.
but I guess that's back to my point is if the reason you're using that is to determine one for the other to either create balance or whatever, that is complete violation of our directive, because that is taking a look and purposely creating a difference in power, but if, for lack of a better word, between parties. I mean, if your consideration of a map is based on what those numbers are, then that is mapping for the purpose of favoring in one way or another a party.
Melanie?
So we have the purview that we have no district shall be drawn for the purpose of diluting the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. In order to check that we weren't doing that, we got maps of the different language or ethnic minority groups. It should be the same for number 2. To check that we are not favoring any political party, we should look at maps showing us the numbers of the political party members in these districts. It would be consistent with what we've already been doing on this committee.
Neil?
Question.
Ned, and then question?
So what percentage is it that we reach to change our map? How do we know if it's 10%, 30%, if it's 70% one party, then I would agree with the argument, but otherwise it's not going to be that with most of the voters non-affiliated. So how do you determine what number are we going to change our maps on? What percentage? If
Neil?
it's Rs or Ds or whatever.
Drew?
Now, I don't think we have to answer that question today. You're putting the cart ahead of your horse. And I think, again, I'll say, I think the information is not going to show us a whole lot that's going to influence it. But to my colleagues to the right, to the point being made here, we very clearly have under number 1 in the map drawing criteria, the things that we are supposed to be actively considering: the contiguous nature, the precinct lines, the communities of interest, current growth patterns, including the building permits and UGB. To Melanie's point, the second one after that is talking about political party. The third one is talking about language and ethnic minority groups. So again, we have considered that, and we have not considered 2 yet. So I think that's important. The rest of this gets into population, and we've already decided we're doing voter registration over population. Okay, fair enough. That argument was done. And 5 was MAP will have 5 districts. We've also debated that and decided a while ago we weren't going to do something I would have personally favored, which would have been an at-large +4, or the Missoula option, which was shot down at the commission. So we've gone through everything except for number 2. So again, we can choose to ignore it, and we can vote on that right now. But we have an active motion to go ahead and get that data per the instructions from the commissioners, and I think we should do that.
Bill.
So what I think we've realized just by talking this through and having gone through the whole process of creating maps, I really want to know if the commissioners, kind of like we've asked them about the 10% or 5%, I want to know what their scope of review is on this, because what I hear talked about this, if it's crazy, if it's off, if it's very skewed, and as Ned said, well, what percent makes it any of those things? So what do you do with the information when you've looked at it? You say, oh, well, okay, from my point of view, that's close enough. And somebody else says, well, no, from my point of view, it's not close enough. Well, to me, that's up to the commissioners. If they like the maps or not, do they want us to go into that whole debate here? Because I don't think it stops with, well, I think B is better than A or C for that one reason. I mean, I can't see any of us really using that as the single determinant of a two map option. It seems like, so I personally would like to go back to the commissioners if we're going to, because I don't think we should be going down this whole rabbit hole.
Another comment?
I have another comment.
Yeah, Carol.
If that's the case, then why did they put it in our map drawing criteria? They've already given us instructions. Now we want to ask them what their instructions are. Again?
Bill.
Yeah, I exactly. I think we should ask them what extent that is, because we did that exactly with 5% versus 10%. When it was objected to as it has to be 5%, we asked them, what criteria are we supposed to use to then evaluate that? Because I think that's really up to them in terms of what, if that's a factor, but it isn't up to us, and we don't want to start. It alters the whole process we've just gone through for 8 weeks or whatever it is. So,
Melanie.
Sure, that language is in the Secretary of State's directive and might even be statutory. So I'm not sure what a further conversation with the commissioners would do. And I think we should vote on my motion, and then if we want to make a motion about that, maybe we should do that. But I'd like to vote on my motion.
I'll take that as excuse me, Drew.
Yeah, one of them. I mean, if and I agree with Melanie. Part of the reason this language isn't there, I'm quite sure part of the reason the commissioners put it in there is because it is language that is consistent with just about every map drawing effort going on across the country, because otherwise you open yourself up to legal challenge. So I would suggest that the other thing you could do is simply kick it up to county council to say, can we not consider this, and is that going to pass muster legally, or is this something we really have to do as a mandate? And I would guess the answer is the latter. The precedent is out there everywhere else. So
Bernie.
It's been a long time, but what was the motion?
Motion is to have Lee provide a bar chart that shows the political party registration in each of the districts on each of the both maps. So it would have, A is this bar chart, B is this bar chart for both of them.
Point of order. That's not the motion I heard. But could somebody read back the motion that was actually given?
They don't have a transcript in real time.
Well, I don't think we can.
That's not what it
What was the motion that?
was. She actually was a whole lot of language that didn't mention bar charts.
no, I think she was reading.
That wasn't it.
Description earlier.
I can clarify. I heard bar charts, that we were going to do bar charts for both graphs for both maps B, map C. Each 5 districts would have a chart listing Democrat, Republican, and non-affiliated for all 5 districts for both maps.
Third party, to be clear.
Okay.
Non-affiliated and third party.
Is one is
other
grouping.
category.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm willing to give up my IPO status for that for the moment.
So that's what I wrote down. I didn't write it word for word, but that's what I wrote down for staff to bring back if the motion passes.
And you agree with that, Melanie?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, Ned?
Just for my clarification, we were instructed not to do something, so we're gonna now do something and say that that's proof that we didn't do something. Is that?
Only if you vote yes.
Did someone move the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have a second for that?
I seconded it earlier, yeah.
Second?
Yes.
Did-
I have-
Carol seconded, sorry.
Carol.
One of us did.
Carol did.
Okay,
Thanks,
so
Drew. You can third.
Debate ends. We'll now vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed, say sign.
Name.
So it fails 4-3.
Actually, I thought you were voting on previous question, which requires a 2/3 vote.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me redo it correctly. So the first motion to do is on terminating debate, which is moving the question. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of terminating debate signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, now we'll vote on the motion. Sorry.
You know, can I ask that people raise hands? This is for people watching online.
Oh, sure. Yeah, raise your hands on.
Excuse me, but they also, one of the observers recommended that the names of the people be documented in the minutes on how they voted.
I've started doing that for I think the past 2 meeting minutes. I created a section at the end for motions and who voted on them.
Thank
So they are reflected in the meeting minutes.
Okay, now we vote on Melanie's motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Raise your hand, please. Okay, the motion fails 4-3.
And, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
yeah, I would like a clarification. If in fact we're keeping track of who voted how, then we would need to do all of our motions by hand, show of hands, as opposed to verbal.
We'll do all of the motions.
Just if in fact that's being recorded.
We'll do that.
And they have, there was one motion in the last meeting where I had to play it on real slow mo to get one of the votes. But I think for the most part, everyone has been raising their hand, but it is a good point of order there.
Drew.
So I accept the outcome of this vote. I'm not questioning that. I do think we are creating a bit of a mess for the commission with having made this decision. And I would suggest one of two things. Either we in referring this back to the commission, say we took a view. Again, I said I think the majority that voted on this should come up with a statement that says we took a view that this is creating more problems than it causes, or something. What the rationale is, you guys, for not considering this? I think you should let the commission know that, and/or we actually go to county council and say, can we ignore this and expect that these maps can pass legal muster? Because I fear that having said we're not going to consider this at all, we have created an issue for ourselves. I'll just want that on the record is my position.
Would you like to make a motion?
Well, it's a point of discussion. I can turn it into a motion if people would like. Yeah, I mean, my motion would be either, and I'll give the opposition that prevailed the option here, whether they would just like to refer back to the commission with a statement as to why we are not doing this, or if they're not quite as sure of their position as they seem right now, if they would like to kick it to county council for determination, I think that would be a prudent course. So we're not putting ourselves in the position of judge and jury on this particular issue.
I think that's maybe two separate issues. So we probably should.
It's a
May I suggest, Drew, that
okay.
you go to the second one
Okay.
first, ask
Sure.
county council.
Okay, so yeah, I would move that we take this particular point and ask county council whether it is necessary for this committee to consider that in order for this to stand, what council would think would be legal muster in this process.
Second that.
Second is Matt seconds. Discussion on the motion? Bill?
So I was one that proposed, we asked the commissioners to do it. So county council needs the whole context of what we've done here, though. And so I don't know how who's going to present it to them and how they're going to do it. But the issue is, to me, that we're told not to do it for political purposes. And then we're looking at political outcomes and saying that that somehow is a political purpose. Well, if all we looked at is we still voted the way we're going to do it, or if we already voted and then looked at the outcome, that's it. But to me, I'm concerned about what we're asking the legal counsel specifically, because I don't know if it's been tested, but I guess I just don't know where we're going with it. I mean, what are we going to ask them? How are we going to, do they know the depth of what we've been involved with regarding
I
it?
think Jen can.
Well, I can see that they've been following this meeting online, so I can ping to see if they're willing to step in right now, but they have been following the meeting today.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion,
here.
second, further discussion?
Sorry, there's a couple things. Is the motion to ask county council or to ask them to come to the meeting?
The motion was to ask county council.
It was to ask,
Staff goes and asks.
but Melanie suggested we could have them here at the next meeting and the question could be raised directly with them here. I'm fine with that.
My interpretation of the motion I seconded was that we ask county council whether we are required to look at the voter registration data.
It
Ned?
was a political party, not.
But, or, yeah, political party affiliate, I mean, voter registration, but
Yeah, I'll withdraw the motion in favor of a suggestion from Melanie, but you can move your
Do we need a
suggestion.
motion to just ask the county council to be here? Like,
I think we can just ask.
does anyone oppose that? Why don't we have him here and we'll ask him?
Okay. We'll have county council next meeting and.
We will request it. I'm not guaranteeing, but we will request a county council. Next meeting.
Dave has indicated, our county council has indicated that he'll attend if requested, so we're happy to do that.
All right. So my wrap up on things we still are going to have, hopefully the Redmond information that we discussed earlier.
Yeah, and I'm not going to guarantee that because it's dependent on Ribbon staff, but we will continue to reach out to them to see if we can get that multifamily data by units.
And then staff maybe could put together the recommendation dealing with the 2030 census and the review, some wording that
I'm not sure that I have clarification on what the DMAC would like us to put together for a recommendation. I think that DMAC could put together a 1 or 2 sentence word recommendation or longer on what they may recommend to include in the ballot title versus staff writing that. I think that should come from the DMAC.
I agree, but I was just looking at some suggested language that the committee could.
I think we would want very specific guidance on what the DMAC is looking for language. So that could be a point of discussion for next time
Or now.
or now.
Is it something we could think about then if we're?
Yeah. And again, the idea is a new census 2030, data available to late 2031. There's going to be review because of other districts and precincts and those sorts of things, that it would be an appropriate time for the county commission to take a look at the maps.
I guess the other consideration there that could be on the table is, do you want it for future or do you want it to very specifically just for the next census? So does it apply going forward for?
All
Yes.
census.
So I'm not recommending any of that. I'm just saying those are some considerations to include in your language.
One point of clarification, it came up about, or seemed to be said that that it would necessarily, this districting would affect all the way through the 32 election. Why wouldn't the redistricting be done at the same time as the legislature? And because they do it after the census, before the 32 election, wouldn't we be on the same schedule? I mean, that'd be my recommendation. 'Cause then we.
Is that it? Sorry, Phil. I didn't want to cut you off. We don't receive that data until the end of 31, implementing it prior to our first election in 22. So that, yeah, 32. Sorry, did I say 22? Keep doing that. 32. So then the filing period for 32, as you know, would start in September of 31.
So you'd already be in an active election, and I'm not sure how that would play into those changes. That's something that I'll have to get clarification on. The guy clearly didn't think that through.
Bill,
No.
So why isn't that true for the legislature then?
That's yeah, that you're might be right. Again, I didn't think this through, but I'm just thinking of the other districts. You could be right too. So that would answer the other question from earlier, if it would apply immediately or not. I just know that the local districts that we've had to have rezoned and supplied those changes to us were in the start of this past time 22 and applied in advance of their first election that was in 23. So this one happening at that same time period, I'm not sure. I have to do some research on that. I don't remember.
So the legislature was for 23 when those went into effect, their maps.
I don't know. I don't recall. It could have been for 22 at the time. We're not the filing officer for those seats. So, I would take the filings that the state provided back then. And to be honest, we had just gone through that redistricting process, and we're happy to get that done and rubber stamped and move forward. But we had a year for all those other local districts. So I did not think this piece through.
So the legislature was done in 22 because our current legislators are in districts they've had for two elections.
Terms.
Yeah. So
Jen, does that give you enough clarity?
I don't think that there was something on the, no, the answer is no. I'm not, yeah. I think the only clarity we're going to look at is that the takeaway from this current conversation is we're going to look at what potentially for the 2030 census, when those maps, if they were redistricted, if they're in effect and they're redistricted, when they would apply to current county or county commission seats. That is our takeaway right now from this discussion.
And with the comparison to legislative seats, leaving that aside, there are other districts or other counties that have commissioners districted as well. And I will reach out to those counties and clarify how they went through the same process.
And the other item was the yearly building permits.
Yep, we still have that as a official takeaway from, and I summarized that at the beginning of the meeting.
All right. Other comments from the committee? We're getting closer to, I think, having a vote on map B or C. So I appreciate all the hard work and the effort and the stress that goes into this. So we'll adjourn and come back in a week.